everybody, this is SA, and I am with the author Sesh Corner. This is my co-host Wren Nightingale, and today we are reading chapters from our debut novels. Last time we left off on chapters 5 and 6, so we'll be reading 7, 8 today. If you haven't followed along the last few times, you can go check out our YouTube and Spotify, catch yourselves up. And a little where I left off on Fool's Haven is they just discovered that Gracie is a split core and that there is a witch at the resort that is affecting her. So, alright. I'm going to go ahead and start, and chapter 7 is Simple Explanation. Kinsley sighed and twirled a black curl around her finger. She was short and slim, but had a muscular build. Her hair was black and full of curls at shoulder length, and her eyes were the lightest shade of blue. She and Brody sat through a lecture about love and compassion for couples. Brody was invested in the lecture. Under his metal exterior was a man who loved sappy romances. She, on the other hand, was bored to death. Kinsley's enhanced senses didn't detect a hair out of place from the crowd participating in the event. "Brody, how much longer?" she whispered. They already had one person on the radar, so at this point they were trying to pinpoint an accomplice. There was no way that only one woman could be pulling all the strings. "Shh," Brody hushed her, waving her off with a large hand. Kinsley rolled her eyes. "Well, come find me when you're done," she said as she stood up to leave. She wasn't sure if Brody even realized that she had left, as he didn't turn to look at her. Still, she knew he would figure it out eventually. Making her way from the meeting room to the lobby, she walked over to the windows and admired the view of the mountains with a slight smile. She could get used to this, but the eventual departure once the job was complete saddened her. She was actually enjoying her time at the resort with Brody as they worked, almost as if they were on a small getaway. Taking the job alongside Gracie and Sebastian was a perk she wouldn't trade either. A loud clatter from behind startled her from her musings. Turning toward the sound of frantic footsteps, she caught a glimpse of blonde hair just as it disappeared behind a door. "Sebastian?" Kinsley called as she jogged after him. She pushed the entry door open before it clicked shut. She looked around until she spotted Sebastian by a tree and called out to him again. "Sebastian." Sebastian jumped at his name. "Where's Gracie? Is everything okay?" she asked, panic rising in her voice. Sebastian frantically running past her without Gracie just didn't sit right with her. Sebastian folded his hands behind his head as electricity licked his body. He winced. "Yes, she's fine," he growled through clenched teeth. Kinsley could only stare at him. The look of agony in his actions were oddly familiar. As the electricity subsided, Sebastian heaved to catch his breath. "How long has it been?" Kinsley asked. He furrowed his eyebrows. "How long for what? What are you doing? Why are you even here, and where's Brody?" "I left him at a lecture. I was about to fall asleep out of boredom, so I decided I would walk around the building and investigate," Kinsley said. "As for your situation, elements must release pent-up energy. If you stay dormant, it will get excruciating. It needs a release, kind of like orgasming." Sebastian raised an eyebrow. "That did not feel like a fucking orgasm." Kinsley giggled. "I didn't mean it would feel like an orgasm. It's just similar to a release. When you have pent-up frustrations, what's better way to rid them than by getting a good lay or a good jack-off? Well, elements expend too much magic, so if you aren't releasing properly, it'll be painful when you finally do." When did she know so much about his type of magic? He wondered. He didn't recall Brody being an element, but he could have been wrong. "Take a picture. It lasts longer," Kinsley said jovially, smiling. "But in all seriousness, is everything okay?" "It didn't start until Gracie," Sebastian trailed off. The air felt off as if a million eyes were watching them. "Hey," Sebastian said quickly. "Come closer." Kinsley rubbed her lips together. "I don't see anyone, but I definitely feel him." She moved to stand closer to him. Sebastian grabbed her by the bicep and nodded toward the left as he led them away. Once he had them far enough in the trees to where the presence was weak, he stopped. I didn't recognize that one. It was different from the first, he said in annoyance. Damn it. Do you think it's from the same origin? Kinsley glanced at the resort that stood in the distance. Probably. They usually strive in groups. So now we have two, Sebastian sighed, jaw tensing. I believe you mean coven, not a group. Does it really matter? Sebastian's voice was sharp. Kinsley shrugged. I guess not. Sorry, Sebastian said. Gracie was struggling before I left. Did you know she has a split cord, before all this? Sebastian frowned. Kinsley frowned. Wrong person. No, I wasn't aware until last night. She's never mentioned it. But if it were me, I probably wouldn't either. Her bonding ability is already the type of magic that most seek out in one. Add in divine and boom, it's like a freaking nuclear light bomb. Sebastian's suspicion heightened a little more. For Gracie to keep it hidden from friends and family, there was more to it than just being reticent, he thought. Thanks, he replied. Sebastian, there's a reason she hid it. She will tell you the story when she is ready. Let her come to you. Sebastian looked up with disbelief. It's not like I'm pushing her, he shook his head. I only asked. It's not like you guys or Lee. Watch it, Bryce. He raised his hands. I suggested leaving Gracie alone. You guys all decided to push her and give her no choice. What is your problem? Kinsley snapped. Gracie is my best friend and has been for the past 7 years. Don't flatter yourself by thinking you know her better after two measly days. You know I thought you were all right. Now I might be second guessing. Sebastian turned and punched the tree with a loud thud. Kinsley flinched as he pulled his hand away, knuckles scraped from the bark. He clenched his jaw and inhaled through his nose to hold his breath. He waited a moment and then exhaled through his mouth. I never once said I knew her, but she makes me feel like we've been friends forever, he said calmly. You can like me or not, I couldn't care less, but you won't tell me I can't be around or be friends with her. Those words never came out of my mouth. I'm saying for the future, he said, letting his arm fall back to his side. You really do care for her. Her facial expression softened. What does it matter? I've only known her personally for 2 days. You've made that clear. Kinsley clicked her tongue. If you didn't, you wouldn't be so defensively bickering with me. Sebastian pondered her response. It might have only been 2 days, but that was all it took for desire to war with caution. I can't act on the feelings even if I do. He curled his fingers to make a fist. Confused, Kinsley asked, Why is that? I just can't, Sebastian answered. If I do, I'll only get hurt, or I'll end up hurting her. I do not understand what you're trying to say, Sebastian. Care to, elaborate? She asked, waving her hand. Not really. I think I get it. You're scared of falling in love because of what you watched your dad go through, she said, grinning. Sebastian shrugged. It's a scary thing, she added. That's not really why, but it plays a part. Sebastian rubbed the back of his head, feeling awkward. He had never felt intimidated by Kinsley, but right now he sure felt she had the upper hand and she played it well. I think you have difficulty processing those feelings. Let me ask you this. Why did you chase Gracie? Everyone knows you did, and your friends aren't exactly discreet about their opinions. Kinsley eyed him as he remained silent. Look, I'm not Lee. I know how to keep privacy. Well, private. I don't know, Sebastian said. I don't know. Something told me, like a push, there was no brushing off the feeling. Huh, Kinsley mumbled. Sounds like your magic is rather fond of our Gracie. Kinsley's device rang, but she ignored it. What the hell does that mean, my magic? What does my magic have to do with this? He was fibbing. He had suspicions about his magic and the attraction it had toward Gracie. The slight tug had always been there, but he had never thought too hard about it. It wasn't as if they had been friends when it had started. The effect was only noticeable when they were within a few hundred feet of each other, which wasn't very often. Holy hell, Sebastian, do you really not know anything about your element magic? She asked incredulously. Theo is the only other person I know who has an element for a core, and he's an idiot, Sebastian said. Sebastian, Kinsley facepalmed. Brody has an elemental magical core. Well, fuck, he hid that well, Sebastian sighed, so that's why you know so much about it. Kinsley's device rang again, and she opened her mouth to respond. This time she answered, and told Brody where she was. After a few minutes, Brody appeared from the direction of the resort. I had Tanner go on patrol by your room since you all decided to have a girl sesh out here, Brody said. Kinsley whacked him on the head. Sometimes I wonder if there's a brain in there. Probably not with all the abuse, Brody joked, earning an eye roll from Kinsley. Sebastian, for this part, simply watched, intrigued by how natural their banter and playful touches came. I wouldn't call it a girl sesh, Kinsley said, rubbing an eye. After completing this job, we need to educate our friend here on the origin of elements. Brody barked a laugh, hands holding his belly. You're shitting me. Sebastian huffed, unamused. He cursed himself for letting Kinsley learn too much. Not that he had told her much, but she was very intuitive. Forget it, Sebastian said. I should probably head back. He shoved his hands to his pockets. Wait, I'm only joking. I'll tell you what I know, Brody offered. I learned from my pops before he passed. A look of apprehension passed over Sebastian's face. He never thought in a million years that he would need to take lessons from someone else about his magic. You can tell me whatever your metal heart desires, preferably somewhere other than out here in the cold, Sebastian said as his breath came out in a white puff of smoke. Wuss. You have the biggest coat out of the three of us, Kinsley said, but then the smile on her face fell into a frown. Her eyes darted toward the resort. What's wrong? Brody asked, noticing her uneasiness. Kinsley rolled her lips. Something doesn't feel right. Again, she shifted her feet. Why do I think they know who we are and what we are, and that we are out here away from Gracie? Gracie is vulnerable. Maybe, Sebastian said, guilt in his tone. She has her bonds, and I have a barrier over the room. Maybe I'm overreacting, but still, she mumbled the last part. If it's bugging you that much, let's head back, Brody suggested, but I agree with this guy over here. It's colder than balls out here. Wait, Sebastian exclaimed, his eyes widening. What the hell is going on? They all turned toward the resort. I feel it, Brody said, lowering his eyes. Gracie? Kinsley asked nervously. I told you something felt off. No one disagreed, Sebastian said, and then grunted as he felt some magic radiate. As he felt some of his magic radiating from him. It's Gracie. He took off running, his magic pulling him toward Gracie. He hoped they would make it in time. And that's the end of Chapter 7. Chapter 8, Confrontation. Gracie was exhausted. Sweat rolled down her face and her chest glistened. She managed to create and hold the spear shaped longer with each attempt. They hadn't discussed spellcasting, but Holly said she needed a handle on her core before they started messing with spells again. Enough, Holly ordered. Gracie broke her concentration as the energy zapped from her body. Take a break. Gracie groaned, throwing herself onto her back, her arms spread eagle. I am taking my leave for the time being, Lady Gracie. I will return with what I think will help you. Gracie had no energy to protest. Someone kill me now, she mumbled to no one. She was all alone. Leon had informed her that Sebastian left undetected for an urgent matter. Sebastian was upset and needed a breather, but Leon didn't explain why Sebastian was upset, and she didn't ask. Leon said Sebastian would return in an hour. 4 hours ago. After gathering every bit of energy she had left, Gracie managed to sit herself up from the floor. Her stomach was empty. She crawled slowly toward the small fridge, rummaging through it. She grabbed the first container her hand landed on. It was cold pasta. She stuck a finger into the cold, compacted pasta and pinched noodles. Chewing, she shrugged her shoulders. Huh. Not bad. I've had worse, she said out loud, pinching another bite. She started to feel slightly better the more she ate, but she wanted to eat it like a savage animal. Mid-bite, her hand froze as the noodles fell from her fingers. The barrier over the door sparked and dissipated with a loud pop. Shit, she mumbled. She wiped her hands onto her pants, setting the container down without making a sound. If that were Sebastian, he would have been able to cross the barrier without any issues, since he had been the one to create it. She eyed the open door to the balcony. The room was above solid ground, so she could jump down. She silently cursed the world for everyone leaving her alone. Adrenaline pumping, she stood up wobbly and rushed to the balcony. She heard the door lock combust, her eyes widening, realizing whoever was at the door was about to make their appearance. She didn't want to wait around and see. She gripped the railing, climbed over the side, moving down to where her legs dangled. It was a good 20-foot drop if she had to guess. 1, 2, 3, she screeched, letting go of the railing as she dropped to the ground onto her back, the fall knocking the breath right out of her. She rolled to her belly and pushed herself up, mumbling to herself that she needed to work on her endurance. Her body was screaming and there was no way she could use magic in her state. "Hello there." Gracie yelped in reflex from being startled, one hand raising to her mouth while the other landed on her chest. A woman with red, curly hair tilted her head, smiling at Gracie. "Didn't mean to frighten." The woman's red lips gleamed against her white teeth. "Who are you?" Gracie asked. Her eyes didn't leave the woman in front of her. She only had one card up her sleeve, and that was to use whatever magic she regained, which was very little. "Oh, how rude of me. My name is Marge, and you are?" Gracie backed up, dropping her hands to her side. "Lynn." Lynn was the first name that came to mind. She wasn't about to give her real name. "That's a beautiful wristlet you have there," Marge said as she glanced at it. Gracie curled her fingers into a fist and moved her arm behind her back to hide it. "Thanks, I guess." "Do you, need something? I'm kind of in a hurry." Her toes were already freezing since she hadn't been wearing socks or shoes while meditating. Marge's lips parted. "As a matter of fact, I do." She took a step forward and Gracie took a step back. "We can dance all night, honey." "What do you want from me?" Gracie asked as she focused energy on the hand she had behind her back, just like how Holly instructed her to do in training. "You." Gracie kept her focus. "Me? You don't know me, so why would you want me?" "That pretty little power you have," Marge grinned, pointing a manicured finger. "Glory thy name, solar divine." Gracie raised her left palm into the air. An explosion of light blinded her and Marge. She kept her focus on the spell, even though it blinded her too. It was the only disadvantage with that spell. She heard Marge cry out, cursing about her eyes and a burning sensation. She could feel herself starting to stagger. 5-star pentagram. She moved her hands into opposing swings as her palms met, creating a cup with her hands. Divine spear. The ball of energy formed above her cupped hands. "Scatter," she whispered. The spear shattered and ricocheted in all directions. Gracie heard Marge growl, her energy disappearing. She started to sway, falling to her knees, about to face plant the ground when arms wrapped around her waist, jostling to stay upright. "Tanner, where are you?" Brody asked. "Sebastian?" Her eyes fluttered. Sebastian crouched and held Gracie awkwardly as she subsumed to unconsciousness. "Was that power surge from Gracie?" Kinsley asked and stared at her best friend. "How the hell would I know? I was with you two," Sebastian said. He squeezed Gracie as anxiety pervaded within him. "Right," Brody said, hanging up his device and stuck it in his coat pocket. "Looks like Gracie had a visitor. They intercepted and dismissed the barrier, and you no longer have a door handle. They could sense her after all, even with the protective barrier." "Fuck." Kinsley grabbed one of Gracie's hands. "Well, what do? We can't just leave Gracie here. She isn't safe, but we also have to have a job to carry out." The group debated on how to go about their predicament. Sebastian grunted as he shifted. The position wasn't knee or feet friendly. He grabbed Gracie under the knees while his other wrapped around her back and moved her into a bridal-style hold. "Tanner will be meeting us soon. Let's head back toward the mountain base where Gracie first started complaining. If there's no barrier, maybe we can get Gracie out of it," Brody suggested. "What if their barrier is to let anyone in, but no one can leave?" Kinsley asked. I just feel like if they really wanted Gracie or these men, then it's not just going to be a waltz in the park leaving with Gracie." "She's right," Tanner agreed, walking up and joining them. "I rode with the shadows, past one of the nasty burn on her face. On her face from whatever happened." "Let's try it anyway," Sebastian stated. "I feel we won't be alone for much longer if we stay out in the open." He shifted Gracie in his arms as everyone silently agreed with him. They descended the hill toward the bottom. Sebastian stopped suddenly as they neared the valley. His magic started to lick his skin and danced upon Gracie. He had no control over it and started panicking. Sebastian, what the hell are you doing, man? Brody asked, reaching out to grab him by the shoulder, but Kinsley intercepted by grabbing his arm. Brode, she said, and pointed with her other hand. His magic isn't hurting her. Look how it's dancing on her. It's protecting her. Brody stared at Kinsley and then at Sebastian. I know why, Tanner stated. His magic is trying to camouflage Gracie. There's a barrier. Tanner unbuckled the strap to his pouch and pulled out his pocket knife. He held it by the hilt and tapped the blade thrice in front of him as it clashed with a barrier. A field lit up. Kinsley walked to stand beside Tanner and reached out before her. Her hand went through the barrier field with no resistance. Huh, Kinsley said and looked at Tanner. You? Tanner buckled his knife back into his pouch and extended his hand, meeting resistance at the barrier just like the knife. They are aware of me. They probably think I'm snooping. They are very aware of Gracie and Sebastian. What about you, Brody? Tanner asked and turned toward Brody. Guess we'll find out, he said, walking forward and passing through the barrier without resistance like Kinsley. So they are unaware of Brode and me, which makes me wonder, because I was with Sebastian when we realized there was a second presence that he didn't recognize, Kinsley said. Your magic is more unique and lower on the radar, Tanner pointed out. Maybe they thought you were harmless, ordinary human, because it's not per se the traditional core your magic stems. Your magic stems from chakra, which is different than a magician. Kinsley shared a look with Brody. That definitely is a possibility, but what do we do with this information? It's not us who need to be outside of the barrier. She glanced at Sebastian. His magic had calmed down and he stood there glancing up as if he were in thought. The problem we have is, Sebastian spoke, startling them. Gracie bonds blocked their links to her when outside the barrier I had created. Leon made it that clear so they weren't in danger. I'm not surprised they could disengage and destroy the barrier ahead. I'm still an amateur at best when it comes to that. He glanced around and found a grassy spot void of gravel to lay Gracie down. We don't want to do that because then they'll be able to pinpoint our exact location, Tanner said. The other problem is, with her bonds being cut off, we don't have that spell. Sebastian warned and crossed his arms. Excuse me. Kinsley walked over to sit beside Gracie. I think you're wrong. I think she knows more about her magic than she lets on. It makes me wonder if something happened. So, what do we do then? Brody asked, scratching his head. We'll have to wait on Gracie. She exhausted herself, Kinsley said, grabbing one of Gracie's hands and intertwining their fingers. We can't do this without her. Scene break. A couple of hours passed and Sebastian stripped his coat to wrap around Gracie's body. She was only in a long-sleeved shirt, thin pants, and no socks or shoes. He imagined she was startled, and the first thing to mind was flee, not fight. At some point, Brody fell asleep on the ground with Kinsley tucked into his side, her head in the crook of his shoulder. Tanner had taken control of the area and tried to keep himself busy. It's going to get dark soon. What do you suppose we should do? It's eventually going to be too cold to camp outside, Kinsley asked, opening her eyes as her body trembled slightly from the chill. Sebastian sat with his knees up, forearms resting on his kneecaps. He tossed a piece of grass he was fiddling with. I think you and Brody should resume undercover. We need to make sure there aren't more than just the two. We will be fine. I guess this would be a job to remember later. I almost went to flick Lee on the forehead, Kinsley admitted, sitting up. Sebastian snorted. Watch how fast her eyes turn on you. Trust me, I'm gonna do more than just a flick. She's done pissed me off. She may be intimidating, but Lee is harmless. Kinsley smiled. Do you want me to start a small fire? I know the smoke will be a giveaway, but with you being right up next to the main part of town, it'll blend in the distance. You can't even see the resort here. Tanner can always continue scouting the perimeter while we are scouting the inside. Sebastian shrugged. The fire could be a considerable risk, but she was right. He could already feel the temperature dropping as the sun continued to descend. He glanced at Gracie and noticed a faint blue hue on her lips. Do what you want, he finally replied. Kinsley nodded as she stood and then nudged the toe of her boot into Brody's side. Hey, you oaf. Come help me find some firewood, she nudged him again. Brody grabbed her at the ankle. Only if you cut that shit out, he grumbled, sitting up and grubbing his frozen face after releasing her ankle. Kinsley and Brody left after she had started a small fire, leaving some fuel to feed it if the fire died. Tanner agreed to remain on the perimeter, scouting since the cold didn't affect Felicus. I can't stay long, a voice startled Sebastian. Sebastian jumped, ready to fight as electricity licked his body. Leon raised his hands in surrender. I cannot be present for long. They'll detect her magic. Lady Gracie will be fine. Leon held a palm out, waving his hand over the other as a small light flashed and left behind a tiny pearl. He kneeled beside Gracie, grabbed her wristlet, and inserted the pearl into the band around her finger. A little picture. What's that? Sebastian asked. Some of my energy force from my planet to help recover her course faster. Holly really overworked her. We didn't have much of a choice, though. Gracie knows what she needs to do. She just needs to trust herself, Leon said. And then he was gone with the wind. Sebastian stared where Leon stood, before sighing and sitting back down. His eyes wandered to Gracie's sleeping form. He tried to remain neutral with his feelings. Neither could afford to fall in love, especially with each other. What had happened the night prior, however, did change things between them. Maybe it was respect. He did admit he went a little overboard with kissing her on the head, but it felt like the right thing to do at that moment in time. Dusk finally won over the day as clouds scattered across the night sky, blocking stars and moonlight. The tree limbs Kinsley collected were getting low, but Sebastian didn't want to stray too far and tried to stay within sight of Gracie. He poked some of the branches in the fire with a long twig. Tanner had reported in once to give an update. Sebastian stood and walked toward the closest tree by them. He gripped a little branch and zapped it at the base connected to the trunk to break it off. Since it was relatively long, he laid it on the ground and lifted a booted foot on the branch to hold it down, lifting on the end until he heard a snap. He did that a few times, breaking off limbs that branched off. What he collected should last a while into the night. What happened? Her voice croaked. Sebastian's hands froze, hearing her voice. You tell me. You'll have to give me a minute, Gracie said, and closed her eyes. She tried to sit up, but struggled. Sebastian stood up and extended his hand toward her. She clasped her hands into his hands as he pulled her up with little effort. Thanks. He remained standing by her. I'm sorry. Why? I shouldn't have left you by yourself. By yourself, he said. I was gone way too damn long, though it wasn't entirely my fault. Silence fell between them. I don't blame you, she said, fiddling with a tag on his coat. It really sucked eating cold pasta with my fingers, but I made it work. What? Sebastian asked in a baffled tone. Well, she picked at the grass beside her. I literally crawled to the fridge and ate the first container my hands grabbed. I had 1 hour, according to Holly, to recoup. Holly drained me dry of energy, but I didn't get far. The barrier made a loud pop sound, then that's when I realized it wasn't you. I escaped out the balcony. Sebastian arched an eyebrow. You escaped from the balcony? Well, yeah, I was either that or go head to head with whoever was on the other side of the door. But trust me, I wasn't so graceful in that escape plan. She laughed, but then squinted her eyes. Then I ran into a woman named Marge. So she told you her name? What did she say? Sebastian asked. He grabbed a couple smaller branches to feed the fire. They want my magic. But nothing as to why they are actually here, Sebastian asked and stuck his hands in his pants pocket. Gracie shook her head. No, sorry. I think their agenda is getting me now. Footsteps made Gracie jump as Sebastian glanced over his shoulder. Everything is still quiet, Tanner reported. He turned toward Gracie, who had her hands clenched at her sides. Oh, you're awake. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Gracie managed to smile, relaxing only slightly. So, what's going on? Why are we out here? Where's Kinsley and Brody? She asked, glancing around but unable to see much past where the fire lit up. Kinsley and Brody are not on the radar that we are aware of. They both can pass through the barrier. However, you, Sebastian, and I are on the radar and we're trapped. They went back undercover, Tanner explained. If I may ask, what was that you who exerted that immense magical energy? Gracie moved her hands to her lap where she focused on them. I do know some spells. I tend to have a hard time controlling them due to lack of concentration. The training Holly just put me through wasn't exactly to strengthen my core or to make me stronger. More so for me to focus on control and manipulation. The last time I lost control was when I was 8. That caught Sebastian's attention, but he kept his mouth shut. I see. Is it too uncomfortable for me to ask what happened? Tanner asked. I don't mean to impose. Sebastian watched as Gracie's face contorted as she fought back the tears. A tragedy resulted in her blocking the use of that magical core, Sebastian explained, looking over at Tanner. Alright, I will take my leave for another round. Dawn is only in a couple hours, Tanner said and turned away. Sebastian noticed Gracie start to get fidgety. You're not wrong, she suddenly said. The tears finally escaped as she looked up at Sebastian. My loss of control is why my mother is missing. And that is the end of chapter 8.
Alright, so I will be reading my book, Falling Forward. I have a brand new cover design. Oh god, this lighting is horrible. Hold on. Wait a minute. Come on. Ah. Okay. You can kind of... Oh gosh, it's horrible. Whatever.
I have a copy too.
There you go.
Helps.
So I'll be reading that. I'll be reading 3 chapters, mostly because the 3 chapters are short, and it's going to be the end of part 1 in this book. So, where we left off, we had Summer went to Chase's concert, and they had a party, and she kind of left because a random woman showed up from her memory. So we will see what happens with that. So chapter 7 is Summer's perspective. Chase called out again today? I was worried. Justin hadn't been able to get a hold of Chase through calling, just barely through messaging. Do you know anything? Justin seemed to show some worry himself, but tried not to show it. All I could do was shake my head and continue working. It was another busy day at the cafe, which felt more overwhelming with just 2 people. We ended up pushing through like usual, but had to close the store for an hour just to take a break. I haven't been able to talk to or see Chase myself since the night we last drank at the bar, and I didn't want to seem too clingy by constantly trying to talk to him. All Kim had told me about that night was that a random woman came up to us, which changed the mood of our party, causing Kim to drag me out and go home. The band seemed to know who she was, but didn't seem too happy about her showing up, especially when she started to throw herself onto Chase. Kim ended up having to bring each member their instruments the next day, but they avoided any questions regarding who that woman was. I just wish I hadn't gotten so wasted that I couldn't remember what happened more clearly. During our hour break, I sat at one of our tables with a small coffee and pastry that Justin forced onto me. My worries grew more intense than any hunger, even if my stomach tried to tell me otherwise. Instead, the screen on my phone stared back at me. Chase's name in bold with a call or message button below it. They mocked my uncertainty of what I should do. The device I was holding almost flew out of my hands when it started to ring. The number didn't show a contact name, which normally I wouldn't answer. However, with my sudden reaction, the call was accepted, and a voice was speaking over the line. Hello? Summer? Summer, is that you? The voice was deep and sounded familiar. This is Summer. I'm sorry, who is this? I asked in a low tone, but not quite a whisper. This is Ryder. I got your number from Kim. When did they exchange numbers? I would have to question her later. Oh, hey Ryder, what's up? Sorry, but look, can you meet me and the guys today? We need to talk about Chase. Finally, I could learn something. Okay, I get off around 3. Does that work? Perfect. I'll let the other guys know and we can meet up. Let me pick you up from work. Is that cool? If that's cool. With eager acceptance, we ended the call, and I was able to let out a sigh. If anyone knew anything about what was happening, it was them. They've known Chase the longest, and based on what Kim told me, they also know who this mystery woman was as well. I finished up my break and continued the rest of my shift, constantly staring at the clock. Scene break. How was work? Ryder was waiting by the entrance of the shop, leaning against the wall as he watched the doors chime open. It was hectic, but we pulled through. Ryder led the way, walking us down a few blocks. Where are we meeting? We are going to the bar you were last in. It's just down a couple blocks. Why there? It's the only place where we can find a spot to be away from other people while plotting. Ryder turned to face me as he answered. An evil glint washed over his eyes with a daring smirk to show his slightly crooked teeth. I never noticed how different he was from Chase, who was more put together, even if he does wait a couple of days to shave. Once we entered the drinking establishment, the other band members greeted us and sat in a booth far back from the bartender. It was the same spot we sat at during our party, but my memory remained foggy. Okay, so I assume Chase hasn't said anything to you since a few days ago, right? Dominic asked, looking directly at me. I shook my head. Look, here's the thing. Chase is basically being held hostage right now. What? I said louder than needed. I held my hand up to my lips, embarrassed by my volume, but they didn't seem to mind. I can't believe she followed him. What a creep, Richie growled under clenched teeth. And just when we got something good, how did she even find us? She probably questioned his family and gave some sort of sob story to them. They wouldn't know any better or even seem to care. Ryder huffed, waving a hand around. Can you please tell me what's going on? Who is she? I started to become irritated. Right. Look, it all started when Chase was in high school back home. We were just starting fresh and wrote our first couple of songs when he and Brandy met. The name seemed to burn Dominic's tongue as if the name itself was acidic. Apparently, he had helped her with an essay, and she's been stuck on him since. With how cute she is, he ended up falling for her just as quick. After a week, they started dating. However, things got weird within the first month. She started to follow him everywhere. Our practice, his work, even to his house sometimes. She was constantly calling or texting him, asking where he was and what he was doing, and what he was eating. At this point, I started to understand where this story was going. I've seen the same scenario happen on crime television shows. I decided to not interrupt and continue listening as my mind raced. We started to notice a change in Chase as their relationship went on. He stopped coming to practice, stopped going to some of his classes, and even lost weight. It wasn't long before he completely started to ignore us. Dominic finished, allowing another member to continue the story. He finally called us at some point, though, and he didn't sound too good. Chase had told us that Brandy had snapped, and he was terrified of her. Long story short, he was locked in his own bathroom, Richie added. I gasped at the thought, trying to see myself in Chase's shoes. When we got there, the cops had already been called. Chase's aunt advised him to get a restraining order on the girl, which eventually he did. Ryder finished the story, allowing some time for processing. I could feel anger boiling up inside, needing to call for immediate action, but I wasn't sure what to do. Do we call the police this time? I asked. It's hard to say. Chase is the type of person that tries to handle hard situations himself first before asking for help. We've all tried calling him, but of course he hasn't answered. Richie let out a defeated sigh. And you are meeting me because you are the newbie. Look, Chase hasn't really talked to us about this girl, so we only have our own imaginings of what could be happening right now. In my opinion, he's basically being held against his will in that apartment of his. Ryder seemed genuinely worried, my confidence slowly slipping. She might not let him talk to us, but she doesn't know who you are yet. I see. My mind raced, trying to put all the pieces together for what to do or say next. The guys were right. Chase doesn't say much about himself or the hardships he had gone through. This woman could hurt him at any point, and I would never want it to come even close to that. My anger and confidence began to mix, a cocktail for a call of action. All right, let's make a plan then. Dominic crossed his arms, leaning back in his seat. A feeling of nervousness and victory mixed within me. I couldn't help but give a small smile as their eyes lit up with anticipation. Great, let's brainstorm, Richie smirked. Scene break, or chat, yeah. It's been 2 days since we finalized our plans. I had to wait for a day off for us to start and have Kim with us for a getaway. It almost felt like we were going to rob a bank with how we were dressed and fully prepared. Ryder definitely seemed to be the smarter of the bunch, having remembered the blueprint of Chase's apartment building and all the different ways of getting to his door. He had recalled a back entrance that was locked at night. Kim drove us into the alleyway closest to the door and with the utility van, making it look like some sort of maintenance was being done. Right at 8 a.m. sharp, the door unlocked, allowing us to walk into the complex. I was in the middle of Richie and Ryder, with Dominic following the group. Kim stayed behind, keeping the vehicle running if needed. Our plans decided against the elevator as it made too much noise. We made our trek up 5 flights of stairs, starting to take a short break in between as our panting didn't echo through the stairwell. We expected to hear other people walking in and out of their apartments early in the day, but we kept our eyes out specifically for a tall, thin, long-haired redhead. The guys wouldn't think that she would leave Chase alone, but they would have to get food at some point, meaning that there was still a chance we could bump into her on the way. Thankfully, that scenario didn't happen. We finally reached the 5th floor where Chase's unit was. Dominic slowly opened the door, leading into the hallway, peering in before continuing forth. With quiet footsteps, we trailed straight to his door and stood in front of it in silence. Richie slowly leaned against it, trying to listen for any sounds that would indicate they were still inside. He turned to face us as we all heard coherent voices coming from the other side. The band members gave each other a nod and tiptoed back down the hall far enough that they were out of sight, while I stood in front of the door. I could feel my heart palpitating, trying to escape my chest. My nerves shot up and down my back, and arms with my breath being held every few seconds. I tried to silently shake my nerves away, but dealing with a confrontation was one of my worst traits. However, having volunteered for what was to come, Chase's safety was my main goal. With a slow and shaky hand, I moved to give a couple of light knocks on the door, but felt unsure if I had hit it hard enough for them to hear. Footsteps started to resound from behind the wood. A tightness in my lungs grew as the door swung open with a fierce speed to reveal the woman, Brandy. The only credit I could give her was how alluring she was. One would mistake her for a model. Her frame was slender yet toned. She towered over me in height, while her eyes studied me like a wolf watching a rabbit before pouncing. "What do you want?" Her voice held a light yet hypnotizing tone. It was no wonder Chase had fallen for her back then. "Hi, I'm here to see Chase. Is he home?" I nervously asked, almost swallowing my tongue. "What do you need him for? Who are you?" Her eyes pierced through me like daggers. With a deep breath, a sudden rush of anger rose through me. "Chase is my friend, and I would like to see him." "Summer?" I could hear his voice behind Brandy, who was blocking the door. "Fine. I just wanted to make sure you weren't some scammer or anything." I thought about how much truth was put into that, but shook it away as Brandy stepped back to reveal Chase. I held back my gasp at his state. His face hadn't been shaved in almost a week, since I last saw him. His normally bright chocolate eyes were dark and sullen, as if he hadn't slept for a few days. Chase usually had a glow about him, which always drew me in, but today I was almost afraid to get close. There was a dark aura radiating from his apartment, a deep musk that would have drowned me if I stayed inside for too long. "Hey, Summer, what are you doing here?" he mumbled. "I haven't seen you at work. The boss wanted me to do a welfare check on you." That was partially the truth. I had told Justin our plan, and he highly approved, wishing us luck. "Oh, I just haven't been feeling well. I think I came down with the flu or something." Oh, I knew he had to be lying. His eyes diverted from mine whenever he lied. Chase didn't do it much, but I caught it once when we were working together. He was trying to hide from Justin the fact that he snuck a bagel during break and ended up having to pay for it in the end. "Well, shouldn't you go to the hospital? You've been out all week." "No, I'm fine. Brandy's been taking care of me." "But you aren't fine," I blurted out. It was too late now. "You should come out and get some sunshine. Autumn is almost here, so we should enjoy the rest of the hot season while we can." "I thought you said you hated summer." He gave a small chuckle, but not enough for me to stop. "That's besides the point, Chase." I leaned in closer to a whisper. "Are you actually okay?" His eyes stared deep into mine, as if trying to tell me without using his words. There was a sense of fear in them, which I have never seen from him. There was only the sign he gave me to show there was more happening. Chase needed to leave as soon as possible. "Chase is fine," I heard Brandy's voice sternly say, coming to grab his arm and place it close to her breasts as she held on tighter. His eyes looked away from mine, staring at the floor. As a matter of fact, I think he and I will have a rooftop picnic today. How does that sound, dear? I missed quotation marks. No. Dang it. Oh, man. I don't have a sticky note. I'll just write in it. I don't care. That sounds good. Chase's voice was flat. My heart ached from the sight of them together. See? So you can tell your boss that Chase will go back as soon as he feels better. Or he could just fire him and he can find another job. I'm thinking he could find one where he could stay home. Brandy smiled brightly, but her toothy smile was that of a tiger, ready to pounce at any movement I made. I felt defeated. Okay, well... It was hard to say much more. My determination had been cut short. It was so nice to meet you, Summer. Don't you worry your little blonde head about him. Why don't you go back, make your coffee, and do whatever it is you do, okay? Her words slithered out of her voice, or out of her mouth like a snake. Before I could even answer, Brandy had shut the door, leaving me in silence. My ears caught the sounds of the band members' footsteps as they approached me. Before I knew it, my feet were leading me away from them at a runner's pace. I heard one of them call me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The feeling of defeat led me down the stairs, outside of the apartment complex, and beside Kim's van. Falling on sticky cement, tears fell. Summer, what happened? Kim had hopped out of her vehicle and crouched, rubbing my back as I sobbed. At some point, the rest of the band had surrounded me, but in silence. I had never felt more embarrassed than this moment. But there was no room to care anymore. The tears wouldn't stop, and my thoughts raced about what I could have done or said differently. If I had just... was all I could force out. Summer, you couldn't have done much more, Ryder said, crouching to my level. That witch has him wrapped around her like a belt, nice and tight. Is she going to hurt him because of me? I finally looked up to face Ryder. We studied each other's expressions for a moment before he answered. I don't think she will. Right now, she still has him following her directions. You saw how he acted when she stepped back in, right? He was completely submissive. What else can we do? We'll come up with another plan, Dominic sighed. This time, force will have to be applied. What kind of force? I asked. Kim helped me stand back up as my eyes started to dry. They felt heavy and my head began to throb, but there were no more tears. The kind of force that kicks her ass out of his place and back home. Dominic gave a determined smile, as if he had already planned out everything. I wasn't sure if this plan would work, but we had to try something. For now, it was back to the drawing board. And Chapter 7. Or, yeah. Chapter 8 is going to be Chase's perspective. I can't believe that woman. You never told me you had a girl for a friend, Chase. Brandy hissed, snatching my cell phone before I had the nerve to say anything. After everything I've done for you and given you, am I not enough? Brandy, we haven't been together since... Don't you dare mention that day. My body flinched as she threw my phone on the floor. Thankfully, the protective case I got did its job. I had to calm her before things escalated. Brandy, please listen. Taking a step closer to her, my eyes scanned her arms. Those marks were newer. How much has she had done since then? I couldn't bring myself to ask, afraid of another trigger coming from her. I forced myself to look back up into her eyes, my expression betraying me. What, you want to ask about these now? Tears choked out of her. Her personality was different. Whoa. I did not pause at all, that period. Tears choked out of her. Her personality was different from when she found me at the bar a week ago. I've been looking all over for you, Chase, dear. Her arms had wrapped around my neck, a boa claiming its prey, and those red-stained lips landed on my cheek. Her perfume had remained the same all this time, bringing back all those memories I thought I had banished from my mind. I heard from your grandparents where you moved and just had to see you. The fact that she had traced down my grandparents, even after we moved out of town, after everything that happened, means that she was not giving up. Perhaps the restraining order had expired, or it was most likely that she didn't care. Brandon was the type of person who would get her way, no matter what. Kim must have noticed how uncomfortable I felt taking Summer back home that night instead of questioning who Brandy was. My friends didn't know how to handle the situation either, so I had no choice but to take Brandy home with me, especially after the sob story she gave of using all her funds to fly all the way here, not having a place to stay. I knew that if I fought back, things would have escalated. I'm so sorry for everything I've done, Chase. Please take me back. I promise I'll be better. I've been seeing a doctor and everything. Brandy had begged me the next morning. Now I really didn't know how to respond. All I could think about was how she treated me in the end. Could she really have changed? Doubt consumed me. I should have told her to go back. I would have given her all my savings, anything, to just disappear. My mouth would dry up when I tried. Since then, I felt sick to my stomach, and she's been taking advantage of it. I haven't left my apartment since that night, and the picnic on the rooftop was a lie she told Summer to get Summer to leave. What would you like for breakfast? Brandy asked. Another switch flipped, disturbing my thoughts. My mouth was a desert, and my lips were chapped. How much more can I endure before I would be able to convince her to leave? I promised Brandy I would never tell anyone about her mental health, but what about my state of mind? She quickly started over the stovetop, not waiting for an answer. Brandy cooked whenever her thoughts would get dark. She told me her therapist agreed it was a good alternative to what she normally did. I would agree too, if she was a good cook. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to keep down anything she's made and have resorted to blaming my stomach on the flu so she wouldn't snap again. The concoction was already making... What? Oh, the concoction she was already making had a mix of smells that churned my whole digestive system. Mouthful. I thought I had heard her crack open a few eggs, but just the thought of the last batch she made brought acid up to my mouth. I quickly ran to the bathroom to unload it into the porcelain bowl. Oh no, Chase! Why don't you go lay down some more? You're going to keep getting sick if you keep walking around. Brandy's voice came from the doorframe of the bathroom as I flushed down what used to be my granola bar that I snuck while she slept. Maybe I can skip breakfast today? I tried to mumble, pushing back my imagination of what she was planning on feeding me. Why? You need to eat. She paused for a moment. The tension in the room grew as I noticed she started to come to some sort of conclusion. Oh. Brandy? I stood too fast, causing everything around me to spin. I slumped to my knees, bracing myself for full impact on the linoleum. My voice couldn't finish as I heard her feet stomping towards me. Without any warning, a sharp pang swiped across my left cheek, leaving a burning sensation that left me too stunned to speak. Don't you dare. You have always done anything you could to show me how much you hate me. I swear, wasting good food. I've been so good to you. What? Now I'm a horrible cook too? Her voice shrieked. Another quick flip of her switch turned to aggression. I knew I had to find a reasonable explanation before it got worse. I'm sorry, Brandy. I couldn't get much else out as my body began to tense and tingle. My lips remained frozen in place. Buried memories resurfaced to what could come next. A slap was nothing compared to what she's done before. She leaned down to look into my eyes. Her expression went from angry to solemn, hiding behind a mask. Oh dear, look what you made me do. I wouldn't have to punish you like this if you just showed me you cared. Her voice was gritty and sweet, just how her name tastes. I do care, Brandy, I mumbled. Her expression drowned? I don't know what I was using that word for. Her expression drowned when I answered, I guess. Really? Tears filled her eyes as she knelt before me. She cupped my face in her hands. I'm so sorry, Chase. I'm trying really hard to be better for you, I swear. I didn't mean to hurt you. My chest tightened listening to the cracks in her voice. I couldn't help but wrap my arms around her carefully, afraid that if I squeezed too hard, she would shatter. I let her sobs run through me, listening to each quivering breath. We stayed like that for what felt like ages, until she finally calmed down, slowly pushing me back. Maybe I can make you some toast. Her eyes refused to look at me as she stood. I took my time straightening myself before following her out of the bathroom. Her movements were slow, but careful as she placed 2 slices of bread into the toaster. I was thankful she left the setting on my usual time. When Brandy and I first met in high school, I instantly fell in love. Anyone would have noticed my gaze every time I saw her. I believed at some point she caught on. She had asked me to help her study, even though she had better grades than I did. At first, our study sessions were small, We would have our first meetings in the school library, then soon at the local coffee shop on weekends. It wasn't long before they stopped being study sessions and turned into dates. I hadn't noticed anything odd then, just what I assumed was typical female emotions, as the guys would call them. Brandy and I really connected, talking about our childhoods. She grew up originally in what anyone would call a proper family. She had doting parents who always taught her to do the right thing and get the best grades so she could go to college and have a lifelong career. Most of it changed when her mother was caught having an affair. Her mother left shortly after, leaving Brandy with her father. Trigger warning for anybody. This is just kind of like hinting towards, but it doesn't describe anything. Her father, Mr. Chambers, was well known by everyone, being part of the city council back home. Because of his status, Brandy was expected to still hold herself up and had to state how much she hated her mom, even though that was never the truth. Unfortunately, her father lied about hating her as well, and Brandy knew how much she looked just like her mother. Brandy never went into detail, but I knew where she was going with what she was saying. I felt every inch of me wanting to protect her from then on, and even stopped interacting with almost everyone around me just so I could keep a close eye on her. It didn't take long for that to backfire on me. Because of everything she had been through, Brandy began to develop some disorders. She felt the need to be perfect in every way, and when she couldn't be, she had to find a way. Her father disapproved of me, for more reasons than one, but I did everything I could to be the right person for his daughter. Unfortunately, Brandy had gotten worse the more I tried. Her father was out late one night for a council meeting, and Brandy told me that she felt lonely and needed me to come over. I obliged, knowing that when she felt that way, she would come to school with new scars on her arms. Before I knew it, we were sleeping together. It was something I've always wanted from her, but was too afraid to ask, considering what she had been through, but she told me she was ready and needed the attention. Her father walked in without knocking and almost beat the hell out of me. I ran home that night, afraid he would try to kill me. Auntie Marie and my little brother Sean weren't home that night, having been in the hospital for the weekend. I locked myself in our bathroom, panicked, and cried. Brandy had found her way into my home, almost crying hysterically. She argued about how we could just run away together, that we didn't need anyone else in our lives. Brandy's personality switched so many times that night that I lost track. I couldn't help but call Richie, who advised I should call the police. I was afraid they wouldn't do anything, considering who they would have been dealing with, but when I mentioned that she might hurt herself, they were quick to respond. I could hear Brandy screaming and pounding from the other side of the door, stating how she would end it all if I didn't open the door. Once the police arrived, she ran, and I hadn't heard from her since. Rumors around school spread like wildfire. A lot of blame was put on me, stating that I had raped her, abused her, or assaulted her in whatever way their imaginations came up with. The rumors finally simmered down when her father made the announcement that he and his daughter would be moving to another city for work-related reasons. But I knew that wasn't the case. Either way, I still got a restraining order just in case we crossed paths again. However, I must have forgotten that it was just a temporary one, and she had found me quicker than a fox on its prey. I sat on my bed, rubbing the spot she struck. It was already tender to the touch. I flinched at the pop of the toaster, but calmed when the smell of butter melting onto the crispiness of the bread wafted through the air. Brandy allowed me to eat in silence as she began to go on her cleaning binge again, a new habit she must have picked up for her portfolio of needing to be perfect. As the day continued, so did the time, which had moved unbearably slow. Once Brandy had finished cleaning, she mentioned that it was time for lunch and maybe some amalgamation of soup with bread. It was a bitter smell and a color similar to a swamp. My stomach churned, but I forced enough down to show I had eaten something. The bile in my stomach tried to reject what it consumed, but I swallowed it back down, mentally telling myself that I had to hide it, unless I wanted to feel her wrath again. At least you ate some of the soup. Why don't you take a nap? You look like you have a fever. Brandy chimed from the kitchen, washing my dish. I did as she told, covering myself fully under the light covers and closing my eyes. Sleep took me quickly, but not long enough. With no dreams in mind, the same bitter smell awoke me. My head lifted from the sweat-covered pillow to see Brandy's back turned to me, breathing gently as she slept. My stomach instantly tensed, and I couldn't hold back. Without any time to prepare, my insides poured onto the floor next to the bed. I could hear Brandy's voice calling out, but none of the words made sense through the ringing in my ears and burning throat, but I knew she sounded angry or upset. I just mopped the floor today. Her voice reverberated through me as my skin paled. I'm sorry, was all I could muster as I tried to stand. Brandy quickly shot up, walking around to see the damage. She let out a deep sigh before a growl. Why do you keep throwing up? It can't be because of the food. I followed the recipe to the exact letter. What recipe was that? Swamp soup? I blurted, instantly regretting the words. My eyes watched her face turn into a red balloon. What did you say? Brandy, you don't have to be so goddamn perfect. Your food is shit and it's making me feel like shit too. Why couldn't I stop? I'm trying my best, Chase. I want to be able to cook for you when we get married and have kids. Don't you want that for us? Her body began to shake as tears swelled in her eyes again. Which side was this? I felt unprepared for what to do or say next. Thinking about our future was long in the past. My tongue wanted to be swallowed, choking me on my words. I don't want that for us. What are you saying? I couldn't tell if the lightheadedness I was feeling was from the lack of nutrition, our conversation, or the smell of my vomit filling the room. I searched for something to clean the pile up with, finding a used towel in the hamper next to the bathroom to be the best option. I could hear Brandy sighing, sitting on the edge of the bed as it squeaked on the spots where the springs had broken already. What am I doing here? Her voice cracked. I remained silent while cleaning up my mess, the sides already crusting. It would take days for the smell to fully leave. You've been the only light in my path, even though I haven't realized I've stopped being yours. Why did you come back? The question floated out as I scrubbed. Because I love you. I've loved you this whole time, and I thought that if I saw doctors and spoke to the right people, that I'd be better for you. I really have tried, Chase. My father... I flinched. How's he doing? A grumble as my teeth clenched. Now that I'm an adult, he's expecting me to follow in his shoes. He wants me to get into politics, so I've been going to school and studying hard, just like he wants. I do everything he wants. Everything. The last word must have been poison to her. Why would I have thought that he would have stopped violating her now that she was an adult? Perhaps the thought never crossed my mind. Once I thought I was in control of myself, I couldn't help but try to find you and catch the next flight here. But then, there you were, celebrating something with another woman. A beautiful one. Brandy, I sighed, leaving the dried specks that fought me as I stood up, throwing the towel back in the hamper. That night, when your father caught us and you snapped, everything changed after that. I realized then that we couldn't be together anymore. I'm not strong enough to be the man that you want or need me to be. But I want you. No. You want stability, and my life is just as unstable as it was back then. You deserve to be with someone who's just as, if not more, successful, and is able to provide for the future that you want. I'm nowhere near ready for marriage or kids. Her sniffling had a calming effect on me. I washed out my mouth and cleaned my hands, then sat beside her, feeling the warmth of her body. I looked down at my feet, but from the corner of my eye I could see her wiping her face with her sleeve. I didn't know what she was thinking, so I waited. After a few moments of silence, her elegant hand began to caress my thigh next to her. My face warmed as my body tensed. She leaned into me, putting pressure as she inched closer to... Stop, I demanded. But, look, I think it'd be best if we just slept. Then, in the morning, I'll scrounge whatever change I have and get you a place back home if you need, but you aren't staying here anymore. Why? You don't have to love me. Please just hold me like you did that night. I could only hold you like that if I did love you, Brandy. My words hung heavy in the air. She didn't respond as she took her hand back. The bed shifted as her body went to find its spot under the covers. The silence was deafening, but needed. I remained in my spot until I was sure she was asleep. There was no way I was lying next to her while I still felt this tingling she caused. Alright, chapter 9, last chapter of part 1. This is Summer's perspective. Another turn in my bed would count to another hour of struggling to sleep. My stomach felt disturbed while my mind raced. Something just didn't feel right, and I didn't know what to do. Glancing at the clock, the numbers told me it was well deep into the night. I let out a deep sigh and tossed over again. Chase's situation made me feel helpless. Being in a similar situation, it was like looking into a mirror when I saw how deathly he looked. Excuse me. Brandy was doing something to him, and taking care of his health was not her priority. I could read right through her lies, but my voice wouldn't speak up to point them out. I turned again in my bed, throwing the thin sheet off my body in hopes of relieving some of the stress I was feeling. Nothing. More thoughts went through like rain, trailing along memory road, trying to gather all the positive memories I've had with Chase, but every vision was replaced with his sullen face. My eyes and body tensed when my memories tried to board the thought train. An unwanted passenger trying to take over the controls, taking it down another set of tracks that I tried to keep close off long ago. One of the foster homes I stayed at was anything but good. I was their first and last child they took in, only at the age of 10. The first week was great, having been given new clothes and delicious food, but that quickly changed when I hadn't done the dishes yet. The family would take away my meals, any meals they saw fit if I hadn't done their Cinderella list of chores. When they found that starving me wasn't enough, they sought pleasure in my pain through physical violence. When my social worker came to check on me, I didn't hesitate to claim what happened. It was the worst experience I've had, but at least I had some way of getting out of it. I can't do anything to help him. He doesn't have anyone like I did. Those words spilled out on their own in low whispers, as if anyone was telling them to me. Maybe if he hadn't met me, then maybe she would have had a lower chance of finding him. That I knew was a very low possibility of being true, but the thought still lingered. Maybe during the art auction, there were pictures taken, and he just so happened to be in one that got posted in a random article that she so happened to find. My train was derailed when my phone began to chime on the nightstand. I didn't want to look at it at first, but something in the back of my mind told me it was important. Then, the name helped me move at a lightning pace. With a quick tap on the screen to accept, I stood straight up, pacing my room. Chase, is that you? It was silent for a moment. There was only quiet breathing on the other side before he whispered my name. Chase, what's going on? You sound horrible. I stopped pacing, feeling adrenaline coursing through me. Something was wrong. Brandy's voice was distant, as if she was hiding behind a wall as she called for him. It took a moment, but when he spoke, everything on my mind shattered. I think I need help. His voice sounded hoarse. Tell me what I need to do. The line went dead. My body shook, forcing the device to slip through my hand as I collapsed to the floor. Chase needed my help, but what could I do? I couldn't talk to Brandy when she spewed her venomous lies right in front of me. I couldn't even bring myself to pull away from her the moment I saw how he looked. Pull him away from her. What could I do? His voice repeated thousands of times, feeding me more adrenaline. I have to do something. I grabbed my cell phone from the floor and with shaking fingers called Ryder. He was the calmest one out of the group, and the strongest looking one if I needed it. Plus, I remembered he had mentioned he rode a motorcycle around the city. Thankfully, he answered right away, but with a groggy voice. Summer, why are you calling so late? Pick me up, now. What are you talking about? We are getting Chase out of there. I think he's in trouble. What do you mean? I could hear him shuffling on his end. I knew I'd woken him up, but he must have had the same hormone running through him, too, once Chase's name was mentioned. There's no time. He just called me. There was a pause for a moment. I was already sliding my shoes on, not worrying about my pajamas. He called you? What's going on? Ryder finally broke his silence. I'll tell you on the way, but I need to get to him right now. Kim isn't home and I don't have a license. If you can't pick me up, I will walk there for all I care. All right. I can be there in about 20 minutes. Good. I'll be ready. What are you going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I'm going to save Chase, whether you help me or not. I ended our call with a click on the red button. It didn't take him too long to pull up in front of the house on his motorcycle. He handed me his extra helmet before quickly pulling away. I've never ridden a motorcycle before. I would have been terrified if it wasn't for where we were going. I need a drink of my coffee. Ryder followed behind me as quickly as he could while on the phone with the police while I ran up the stairs. The back door was normally locked at night, but it seemed that someone had propped the door open and had forgotten about it. Summer, hold on! Ryder's voice echoed through the stairwell as I threw open the door leading to the hallway that Chase's apartment was on. It was already past 3 a.m, and there was no more time for planning. My body led me to the front of Chase's door, where I immediately used a trembling hand and forced my way through the front door, which was surprisingly unlocked. Summer, wait! Ryder was running up, but his voice was beginning to blur along with everything else. Upon my entry, my eyes caught Brandy with something in her hand, and Chase's body hunched over hers, wailing her name. My anger instantly turned into fear as I rushed to his side. "What happened?" I asked, trying to survey the situation. Brandy was slumped onto the floor, her face growing paler by the second. Chase was performing CPR on her, pumping on her chest, which was barely covered by her thin shirt. Foam bubbled out of her mouth with each press. His eyes caught the glimpse of a few pill bottles, opened and empty. My eyes. They looked like they had been thrown or dropped on the floor beside the bed. "Please just call for help. My phone died when I called you," he rasped. Ryder's voice shook behind us as he was already on the phone with the emergency line. "Oh, Jesus, please just keep breathing." Chase's face was red, covered with sweat. I offered to take over so he could catch his breath, but he refused. I stood up, taking a step back next to Ryder. My chest tightened at the sight of them. Chase cried as he continued the forceful up and down motion. All anger had left, leaving me standing, unknowing of what to do next. Scene break. "It's been like 12 hours. When will they be able to let us see him already?" Dominic grumbled, his leg tapping at a rapid pace. Once the ambulance arrived, they picked up both Brandy and Chase, noticing how malnourished he was. Ryder and I followed the vehicle to the hospital, and he phoned Dominic and Richie about the situation. Since Chase has been admitted, the police have refused to let us see him. Meanwhile, Brandy's stomach was being pumped, having had a massive number of opioids and antidepressants in her system. The doctor said it was a miracle she was still alive. The four of us sat in the waiting room, some of us more patient than the rest. I held myself tightly, trying to piece everything together that happened up to this point. "I knew she was crazy, but I didn't really think she'd try to off herself like that," Richie said, rubbing his face. "You could be a bit more gentle about this, Rich," Ryder whispered, noticing the half-filled room. "Gentle? What's gentle about a crazy woman who hasn't seen her ex in years and thinks she can come back like nothing happened? Then she can't get her way, so she just tries to end it? There ain't nothing gentle about that." "Guys, shut up," Dominic grumbled. I could feel them looking at me now as they went quiet. "Sorry, Summer," Richie finally said. "Summer!" My friend's voice echoed from the hospital entrance. I watched as Kim trotted up to me before throwing her arms around my neck. "I came here as quickly as I could. How is he holding up?" "We aren't sure yet," Ryder answered. His eyes were growing full. My eyes were growing full. I clenched them, hoping to hold myself back. "What do you mean?" "They won't let us see him yet until they talk to both him and Brandy. It's part of their investigation, I guess." Dominic sighed, noticeable irritation in his voice. I let myself be drowned in Kim's fragrance. She had always smelled like freshly roasted coffee and honey. They were comforting, but still not strong enough to fight away my tears. I could feel my friend's hand caressing my head, nurturing me as if I were her child. The sounds around us lowered, with only Kim's gentle voice being heard, telling me that everything will be all right. But how can it be all right? Each word was fire in my throat. I misunderstood everything. "There's no way you could have known what was actually going on," Kim continued, still holding her low volume while mine rose. "I thought she was trying to hurt him. I thought only the worst of her. I was prepared to take things into my own hands, Kim. I'm a horrible person." As angry with everything as I was, I couldn't force myself to push her away. Instead, my hands brought her closer. "Hey, Summer?" Ryder sighed. He must have quietly sat closer to me, bridging that gap between us while I tried to hide. "This whole thing that you're actually talking about, that's actually our fault." "How?" I was able to ask after sniffling for a few seconds. "Well, like we said before, Chase never really talked about the whole situation. He just told us before that he was afraid. I guess we just took it as she was trying to hurt him when it was actually her trying to hurt herself." "Yeah, after this whole thing went down, all of the information started to make sense." Dominic chimed in, a sense of relief in his voice. "So there's no need to blame yourself, Summer. Chase wouldn't want you to do that either." Richie sat on the other side of me. I felt surrounded, but once more arms wrapped around me, it felt like being enveloped in a warm blanket. All the different scents mixed into one soothing fragrance. I wish I could bottle it for myself. After some time, the officers that were questioning Brandy and Chase finally met us in the waiting area. They had already questioned us previously while the doctors looked at their two new patients, and thankfully they had nothing else to ask. However, Officer Peters and I made contact. He had that tired look on his face, but one full of empathy instead of disdain. His partner, Officer Wolks, was hyped up on whatever energy he had consumed for his late shift, but held an aggressive demeanor about him. There was an interesting story that had to be held between them, seeing as they must have been partners for a long time. It was Officer Peters that spoke to me with a calm in his voice. "We've gotten the information we needed for tonight, Miss Newell. Mr. Carter would like to talk to you privately for a moment." He spoke just loud enough for our group to hear. I gave a slow nod, entering the room quietly, my eyes raised enough to see Chase with his expression. As I walked towards one of the chairs that was closest to him, he spoke. "I'm surprised you stayed this long." His face remained in its position, looking down at his hands on his lap. I wasn't sure what to say, but he continued anyway. "I shouldn't have called you. But if you didn't, then she might have died." The air in the room went still with his words. Even with the band members talking about it all night, it was Chase that made it feel like this was truly reality. "They told me that her condition is stable." "The doctor also said that you weren't eating enough. When I saw you the other day, you were looking sick." My fingers began to fidget in my lap, wondering if I should say anything at all. It felt like he wanted to talk about Brandy, but I wanted to hear about him. It took Chase a moment to respond. When he did, there was a lightness to his words. "That was probably because I had a hard time eating anything she made." "What do you mean?" I watched him stare at his knees, the thin hospital sheet covering the lower half of his body. His expression fell slightly, his eyes finding himself in a different time. I bit my tongue, trying not to beg for more information. I changed my question. "Will she be going back home with you?" He shook his head slowly. I hated the flutter of happiness I felt in my chest. It betrayed what I should be feeling. "She's going back home, and will be admitted somewhere that will hopefully give her the help she needs." "I will hope for the best for her then, too," I muttered. "Hey." Chase turned so his eyes could meet mine, the slight sense of grief quickly transitioning into a smile. "Let's grab something to eat when we're out of here." His expression sent a feeling through me like an arrow, a pure serenity, like a warm summer breeze early in the morning. His look was so honest that anyone could fall for it, yet I saw through his facade. I wanted to shatter the mask he wore and see the real person he was. If only I could find a way for him to open the door for me, just like he did with that phone call. End part 1. Woo! I had to struggle with that one. That reading session.
You did.
Normally I could have, I feel like I can kind of act out how they're saying the words, but I was just not into it this time around.
Well, I mean, it just makes me feel better after, when I read that I'm not the only one messing up.
No, that was horrible. And then I found all those typos. Oh my gosh. That was our readings for today. So the end of this month, we are interviewing another author, correct? Or...
Yep.
Yep.
Back to back to back, 3 weeks straight.
Yes, we have a lot of interviews happening the end of this year, so...
Excitement starts in the next 2 chapters on my end.
Ooh.
Some fight scenes.
Oh, a lot of my... the start of some of the sadness comes in on my end. So...
We'll balance each other out.
Yes. Alrighty. Well, that was the readings for our podcast. You can follow us on TikTok, the Author Sesh Corner. Please do, so that way we can do our live interviews and any other lives that we want to do on TikTok. We need to get to 100 followers, and then what was the other goal after 100 followers?
I need to go live at least 3 times on there to be able to host.
Yes. So
that one will depend on me, not really everyone else. I will just have to go live for 3 times.
Yes. You can follow us on Spotify. We post on Spotify. We post on YouTube. Give us a like, follow, please share. It helps out just to kind of get us out there. Next weekend, we will be interviewing another author. So we will see you guys next Sunday then. Thank you for watching or listening. Bye-bye.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.